Hell Yes Life, episode 39. Welcome to the Hell Yes Life podcast, the show that helps you come alive so you can live a Hell Yes life. I'm your host, Norman Bell. Hey there, Hell Yes Lifers. Welcome to another episode of the Hell Yes Life podcast. I am your host, Norman Bell, and I'm excited to be here. I hope you are too. Hope your day is going well. And just a couple of things. I'm going to try to keep my announcements at the beginning a little bit shorter so we can get right into the episodes. I just wanted to mention that everything that you can use to forward your Hell Yes Life will be available to you at hellyeslife.com. So a couple things I wanted to point out. One is I'm still looking for a few members for our beta mastermind group. So you'll see a banner on the homepage of hellyeslife.com if you are interested in that. Here's just a few details. We're looking to run a free beta mastermind group from September to November of this year. And we're just looking for a few members. So this is so I can get a little bit of experience running a mastermind group, but hey, it's to your benefit, won't cost you anything except for we do ask for your dedication to the group. And there's a few questions that we'll ask you in a survey to, just find out why you're interested in the group and what you will bring to the group. So head over to hellyeslife.com and look for the banner about the mastermind group. Only other thing I wanted to mention is if you want to just dip your toe in the Hell Yes Life waters, you can head over to hellyeslife.com and link to the Facebook group. We have a slowly but surely growing Facebook community, and you'll see me in there on a daily basis posting. We have daily themes, and it's a good place to get some initial support from the Hell Yes Life community. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. Today, my guest is Ross Symons. Ross is an origami artist, and he has over 100,000 followers on Instagram, where he posts or has been posting on a daily basis new origami art. So we'll have links in the show notes to his Instagram page. And you're going to get a sense from listening to my conversation with Ross, just how he got started, where he was before he started his origami project, and where he is today. I think we have it's a great conversation that we have around the creative process and how your ideas can evolve and move forward. So without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Ross Symons. Ross Symons, welcome to the Hell Yes Life podcast. Are you ready to tell us about your Hell Yes Life?
Hell yes, I am.
All right, Ross. Well, hey, thanks for coming back. I have to mention to our listeners that Ross and I had an amazing and awesome conversation about 3 or 4 months ago, and with every intention to put up an episode around that time. And unfortunately, there were some technical glitches in that recording, and we weren't able to air that episode. So, Ross, I just want to extend my appreciation to you for coming back and giving it another go. And let's take this as an indication that, to make it even better this time.
Yeah, no problem at all, man. No, thanks for having me on. And glad I can help you out and do it again.
Awesome. So I always like to start off by asking our guests the question, what is your Hell Yes?
My Hell Yes. So I am an origami artist. I fold paper for a living, pretty much. I started an Instagram project a couple of years ago, and through a series of magical events and meeting the right people and just doing the right things, I was able to eventually quit my job and become a full-time artist.
Awesome. So great to hear. It's so great talking to so many different types of people with so many different types of Hell Yeses. And I think origami is such a unique one. So we're going to really delve into your story here. So let's back up. And I always like to follow up that question by asking, when did you first realize that this was your Hell Yes? This was your passion?
I was working as a web developer or a programmer for a big agency. I live in Cape Town in South Africa. So I was working just, the standard 9 to 5 job, and I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing. It was more about, I didn't really enjoy working with, I enjoy working with people, but being told what to do was always a problem for me, which, if you're listening, maybe you can resonate, you will resonate with that. And I just found that, getting creative instruction and then getting asked to do something just never worked for me. So I was working late nights. This was at the beginning of 2014. Working late nights, I had to miss a friend's birthday party just to get some website up that took, absolutely, like, I don't even know how long it went up for. It was ridiculous. And my project manager, during one of the sort of days that I was working late, I was sitting there and I had this, like, a whole bunch of origami things that I'd just been folding. I'd been doing tutorials. I was kind of into it. It was nothing really at that stage. But my project manager kind of peered over my shoulder and, it's like crunch time to get this website out. And he's like, dude, the website, are you kind of working on that? I'm like, dude, just give me a second. I'm going to, I just need to finish this origami duck tutorial and then I'll continue with my work. But I knew that I'd finished it already. So I just kind of knew then that like, maybe I'm kind of into this origami thing.
Maybe a little more into the origami than you were into the website project there.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah. When it's a sign when you're actually telling your boss, hey, just give me a second here. I'm working on this origami duck here or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And that guy was my boss, essentially. As I was just like, whoa. So I knew my attitude wasn't right for that environment, and I was clearly, into other things than what I was actually working on at the time.
Okay, so let's again, with our listeners in mind, some of who may be in a similar position, whether it would be with origami or not. Maybe they're at their job, they have something that they know that they feel passionately about, but they don't really see how they could ever. I would wonder if you thought at the time, I think I'm going to make a living doing origami art. How do you go from that moment forward? Take us forward from there.
Well, I think in the year that I quit my job was the same year that I started this little side project, which was an Instagram project where my goal was to create or fold 365 different shapes and figures that I'd found in books and online. So I just wanted to do this to get better at origami. That was the goal. And I wanted to create one every day for an entire year, and then post onto Instagram a photo of each of these things that I'd created. So off I went, beginning of 2014, and about 3 months into that year, I quit my job because, just had late nights, like back to back for like 2 weeks. I was just like, I'm done with this. So I just quit, didn't really have a plan, but the idea was to do freelance work. So I knew that the skill that I had, and maybe if you're listening, you do have a skill that you can become a freelancer, but if you don't, do that thing on the side, which for me was the little origami project. Do it on the side for as long as you can until you find out ways of, potentially making money from it. I think it's quite a loaded thing, loaded question like, well, what's your passion and what do you want to do with your life? It's like, I still don't know what I want to do with my life. I still don't know if this origami thing is my passion, based on the true sense of what you kind of think it means to follow your passion and follow your dreams. But I do know that there was an excitement attached to what I was doing. I was focused on it, and I was spending a lot more time on it, in my free time and when I was at work, clearly with my little paper ducks around my my desktop and my keyboard. So I just knew then that it was like, let me just give this a go, quit my job. And throughout the rest of the year, still, I didn't know that I was going to make money from this. It was only towards the end of the year and the end of the project where my following on Instagram started increasing quite dramatically. And people started contacting me to say, hey, listen, this thing that you're doing on Instagram is really cool. Could you fold us, 250 butterflies or 50 rabbits, and how much would it cost? And I was like, cost? Really? You're going to pay for this? Okay, cool. This is awesome. And even then, I wasn't quite sure that it could become a full-time thing. But I started making little animations as well. And I think if you do have a creative hobby, or the hobby for lack of a better word, but something you're doing on the side, just always try and think of how you can do it a little bit differently. And I think that's how I think. I'm not the best origami artist in the world. I'm not the best animator in the world, but I have an interest in both of them. So I try to put them together, and I started creating stop frame animations with origami. And there I could now tell stories online and, create social media content, that's kind of how I make most of the money I make now. And I realized that towards the end of the year, I was just like, well, I don't have to do the freelance work anymore, because the amount of work that's coming in for the origami thing it's way more than I can charge. And I also had to learn how to charge for the work I was doing. I took a chance every now and then, like you send a client or a potential client a quote and you're like, geez, don't think they're going to accept it. And they come back and say, hey, cool, could we have, 2 animations or 2? And you're like, oh man, I should have charged more for that. But for me, that was a way of learning and just speaking to people and asking them, how would you charge for something like this? And eventually, I mean, not everyone's I don't think everyone's designed to follow their dream or follow their passion or whatever, but just follow an interest. I think that's the best advice that I could give. Just find that thing that you're really thinking about a lot and something you want to do, and do it as often as possible. Speak to people about it, surround yourself and immerse yourself in it. And if it feels good, I think automatically you'll start seeing whether you can turn it into something more than just a little side hustle.
Yeah. Great thoughts there. Great suggestions. And my listeners might get tired of me hearing this quote, but in case you haven't heard me say it, Ross, there's a kind of a guiding quote for this podcast, which is by the civil rights activist Howard Thurman, who said, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, and go do it, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. And so for me, that whole like life purpose, finding your dreams sort of thing. I try to bring it back to that, like what makes you come alive, And so if origami is something that, regardless of whether it's you think you're going to change the world with origami, or whether it's your quote unquote big L, big P life purpose, it's something that lights you up, right? So
exactly. And totally. And I mean, right now, even for me, I have an interest in music. I have an interest in films. I have an interest in electronics. So those little things light me up in the same way that origami does. I mean, origami for me now is the thing I do, and that's what I'm known for. But I still always have little side things, not at all thinking like, okay, I could maybe, if I go, busk on the side of the road with my guitar, I can make some money from that. But if there's something telling me go and do that, I will do it, because I know that I've tested that method of just following that interest and following exactly what you're saying, the thing that lights you up.
Yeah. I want to back, I do this with a lot of guests, kind of keep backing them up a little bit. And then we, keep coming back to, the present here. You mentioned, that time period when you were working at that job and you were just kind of, found yourself, doing these little origami, projects. What about before? Where did that even, do you have a first memory of, did it go back to childhood or not that far back where origami, like where were you first exposed to that? Where'd that first fold come from is what I'm trying to ask.
The first time I ever folded something and but it was labeled as origami. It was my brother had a project that he was busy with he was at design school, and he was asked to get one thing from each member of his family to contribute towards it was like a little time capsule thing. So he asked me if I could learn how to fold an origami bird, an origami crane. And that was the first time I folded that. And I just did that for years and years and years. So again, I mean, the interest was there. It just took me literally like 10 years to realize that, oh, there's other designs you can fold. I don't have to fold this silly bird all the time. I mean, I love folding the bird, or the sort of traditional origami crane, but I just realized that like, wow, there's just so much more. So it was just, I had an interest in just the simplicity of, taking a sheet of paper, it was a square, folding it, and you could turn it into something that was, just something that was recognizable as an object or an animal in this case.
Do you have, we can go into this if there's something you can say about it or describe about it, but can you talk about the feeling you have when you're doing those projects? And what I'm thinking of here is, when I'm doing creative projects, I find myself in sort of that flow state, where, I become less aware of time. I get really engaged in my project. Do you feel the same way when you're working on an origami project?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly when I'm designing something. So the design process of origami for me is the most rewarding, I would say, because if I think to myself like, man, I really want to fold an elephant, or a client's come to me and they want an origami lighthouse or whatever, it can be anything. It takes me a while to get into it, and like you say, that flow state that you get into, it takes a number of sort of attempts to, you start and then it doesn't work, and then you start and then it doesn't work, and then throw away and carry on until eventually you start building up some momentum, and you're just picking up from the last time for me, it's just the last time I got to a point where it's like, cool, this is starting to look like an elephant, but it's also starting to look like a dragon in some ways, throw it away. And the closer I get to the idea I have in my head or a reference image or whatever, that gets me excited. And I know that I just need to push through those initial creative sort of walls that you hit. You get to the point where you're just like, oh man, this is not working. You get frustrated and, get up, go for a cup of coffee, come back down. And generally when I'm sitting, when I get into that state, or when I'm trying to get into a flow state, it's almost like there's a lot of frustration attached to it at the beginning. And I find that if I just walk away, go have a cup of coffee, I'll be sitting there and I'll have paper with me, and I'll like, oh, cool. Just change my environment, change the setting, and then inspiration kind of rocks up and I get into it. And often I'd be like, cool, can I have, cappuccino to sit down, and I have to change it to go, please, because I get so excited. I'm like, cool, I'm on this now. I need to get out of here and get back to the studio and start working.
Oh yeah. I can identify with that, in writing projects or doing stuff for the podcast. That creative process, I think, is similar, across different forms. I wanted to ask also about this idea that where this started for you. Was this doing a 365 day challenge? You were going to do one a piece of origami art per day for the year.
Yes,
that right?
That's it. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
And I was going to post every picture on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in this because there's a few things this year where I've seen other people doing that. There's a guest in a recent episode, Sarah Williams, who does the Tough Girl podcast, and she's currently in the midst of a 100-day challenge. She's doing now this is something that I could never even imagine doing, but she's doing the Appalachian Trail, which is 2,100 miles in 100 days. So that's like 21 miles a day. But it's a set sort of a defined challenge, right? And then I've also read this book by Chris Guillebeau called the Happiness of Pursuit, and it's all about kind of setting those kind of challenges for yourself. He traveled to every country in the world. That was his challenge, and then he also kind of talks about a lot of other people's challenges. What was it about? Can you tell me a little bit about how you decided to do that versus, I'm just going to create origami art? It's kind of setting up a specific challenge like that for yourself.
When I think the first time I heard of, there was a speaker, a guy by the name of, he's a speaker and he was a writer and just a kind of motivational, inspirational speaker, a guy by the name of Wayne Dyer. And I remember watching it was a DVD that he'd created where he was sitting just speaking about life and stuff. And he said that he dedicated an entire year of his life to the meditation practices of a book called the Tao Te Ching, which is it's an ancient Chinese proverb book written by this old Chinese guy named Lao Tzu, who's a prophet and, just someone who just knew a lot of stuff. And when I heard that he'd used an entire year, or he's taken an entire year of his life to meditate on these principles and practices, I was like, wow, I'd really want to do something like that, which was do one thing every day for an entire year, contributing towards one project. And at the end of 2013, I was really into the origami thing. And I was like, well, now feels like the right time to start doing this 365-day project. What am I going to do? Well, kind of into origami. I could do a whole bunch of other things, but let's see if I can do that. And I had an Instagram account, so I just thought, well, it would be a cool way to document it. So that's kind of what just kicked off the whole thing. But it was, whenever I thought to myself, like, wow, it's a full year that I've got to create all these things, and how am I going to find 365? As soon as I started thinking like that, I just thought, no, let me just focus on the next project I'm going to be busy with, the next fold, and taking it back to that very next crease that you create in the paper. And that was very meditative in a way, because that kind of kept me focused on, being present, being in the now, and all of that just kind of links up, puts you in the state that you need to be in. And yeah, my creativity just came out a lot. And I think what also helped is the fact that it was a goal that I was aiming towards, which was having all these figures by the end of the year. I knew how long it was going to take. I couldn't rush it because I couldn't, I couldn't fold all of them, post them all, and one day I'm like, okay, cool, I'm done, because that wasn't, that's not the purpose of the project. It was to do it for an entire year. And because people on Instagram saw this whole thing, and that's why it's cool to follow these 100-day challenges and 365-day projects, because you want to see the person succeed. You want to see that, cool, they've set out to create this thing or to do this thing for themselves, and are they going to make it? And everyone's rooting for them. And I think the more extreme it goes, like the more of a hype you can create around that. I mean, that was never something that I really thought about, but in hindsight, that's definitely what happened for me.
Yeah. I'm really interested in that. And I've started to think, listening back to the interview with Sarah Williams, I'm not going to be doing the things that she's doing, and I won't be folding origami art. But I did start to think about, what is that challenge, that kind of hell yes challenge that I could really set for myself. Now, for this year, I think I'm doing pretty good here. It's just, to do this podcast for the year. I've put that out there. That's fine. But now I'm starting to think, what about 2018? What could be that kind of big, kind of more extreme challenge that might, be something that pushes me to really go after my Hell Yes Life. So stay tuned, Hell Yes Lifers, to hear more about that as the year progresses. And in general, listeners, Hell Yes Lifers, as you're listening to Ross and I talking here, what might that be for you? What might be your Hell Yes challenge? That thing that kind of push. It could be something smaller than what we're talking about here, or it could be a really big Hell Yes challenge that really gets you out there.
But I do think that you should. Go ahead. Sorry, I do think that if you do have this idea of like, I want to do this thing, but maybe it's not. When you start doubting it, I think that's all the more reason why you should do it. And if it feels daunting, then double it. If you're like, well, I could never do a month of going to the gym, or a month of eating healthy, or a week for that matter, or going without coffee because these things for a lot of people are big deals. Like I tried to quit coffee this week. Monday, Tuesday were the 2 worst days of my life, and I'm back on coffee now. So I can do origami for a full year, but trying to, kick the coffee habit is something else. So I just think that you just need to set. Because once you set goals for yourself, like miraculous things happen. When you really it's just about persistence and grit, and just sticking it out for as long as possible until something happens. And at some point you might think, well, this is not working out. Then you change it, but at least you gave it a try.
Absolutely. And I think there's something too about, accountability too. So just you put it out there on Instagram. I don't know. Did you talk to your friends and family like, hey, I'm doing this goal. I'm going to be doing this all year long?
Well, I think you could see if you started following me on Instagram, like at the beginning of the project, I had like 160 followers or whatever. So I think everyone that followed me saw, because I'd label each, in the description of each photo that I took, I would say 1/365 or 10/365. So if somebody landed on my account and they saw the little origami thing and read the description, they'd be like, wow, he's on 255 of 365. It's like, he's trying to attempt to finish that. Like, what? Maybe I should watch him and see what happens. But my friends and family were very supportive of it. They were they didn't see me struggling through it. I found it quite easy to do, because I think it was something I wanted to do, and I made a decision. I was like, cool, well, all I've got to do is by the end of the year have all these things. And at no point was it stressful. At no point did I feel like, oh man, why am I doing this? I just said to myself, I'm going to do it. And based on that, it just kind of happened.
I'm going to get a little bit into the weeds of that for a moment. So you set that up and then you get going. Did you have any kind of systems in place? Or, and by that, I mean, just like, okay, at this time of day is when I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to post it on Instagram at this time. I found for the podcast that, I've set the goal for, okay, here it is for the year. And now I've got to kind of figure out, well, how am I going to do that in the most efficient way that I can kind of, incorporate it into my day or my week?
Yeah, I think along the way you'll work it out. That's definitely what happened for me. So at the beginning of the project, the hardest thing for me was to find enough tutorials and to find enough diagrams in books. So what I did was I broke each week up into themes. So and this I only worked out sort of 3 months in, where I decided, cool, so next week I'm going to do butterflies. So it'll be 7 days of butterflies, which I can now find all the designs online. So instead of, the one day I'm like, okay, today's a dragon, the next day's a unicorn, the next day's a building, the next day, there was too kind of, there was no theme to it. So once I established that, that just helped so much, because now I could plan weeks ahead. Well, not too far ahead, but just knowing that, cool, that's the week I'm going to be doing dragons. So any dragon tutorial I'd come across, I just kind of bookmark it and just go back to it. And then all I had to do is on whatever time during the day, I didn't really stick to a specific structure there. I did post regularly at 7 a.m. every morning. So when I woke up, it was the first thing I did, because I figured that, okay, well, the first thing I do when I wake up is check my phone, and then I check Instagram. So if people are online at that time and I post something, chances of them seeing my stuff is going to be quite high. So that's kind of the approach I took. The problem with that is now on Instagram, they've got a whole algorithm thing which feeds you. I mean, I don't know if how active you are on Instagram, but it'll now send you a post from 5 days ago from someone you just started following. It's like, what? It's just all, this whole algorithm to work out, just to keep you in the app for the longest. So there's new ways and new techniques of trying to get seen in front of the right people. But if your content's good, it will get shared, and and it'll turn into something.
Great. So, I think that we haven't talked, and Hell Yes Lifers, I'll have the link in the show notes to Ross's Instagram page. How many followers do you have now?
I'm currently on 107,000.
107,000, right? So
yeah.
How's that, Hell Yes Lifers, for a great example of, someone who stuck with it. And this is what I want to get to is, you said in your little story there that it was really not until about 2/3 through the year that things started to pick up. So what kept you going? I mean, it sounds like you just liked doing it. So did you ever future trip a little bit about oh no, or that way of thinking, right? So you're either thinking about, are people going to like this, versus that, hey, I'm doing this for my own joy.
Yeah, I think it kept going back to me doing it for myself. It was quite I don't want to say selfish, but it was all about me finishing the project. And every time I started thinking about, is this going to get the likes and the comments that my previous post did? Are people going to like this? Which I definitely thought throughout. I mean, especially towards when my following started increasing, you're getting all this attention and people are saying, wow, this is so cool. And then you're like, wow, is there an expectation from the people that are now following this project? And as soon as I did that, I mean, exactly what I said earlier, I just went back to, cool, why am I doing this? What is the next thing I'm going to do? And what is the next crease I'm going to make in the paper? And I still try and apply that to everything I do. If things become overwhelming, or I think too far ahead, or my ego gets in the way and I should be doing this because of whatever, I'm just like, no, man, just focus on why you're doing it. Focus on what you initially started out to do, and that's working. And what's crazy about that is actually my business model. My business model is do the thing that you enjoy the most. If projects come in that are don't really think that this is going to work out, then don't do them. Just say no. But you'll know that the projects that come in where you're just like, wow, I cannot wait to start that, then that is something telling you to go and do that thing.
That's awesome. This is a random note, but I mentioned it in a previous solo episode, but I've been watching this, it's like 6-part documentary about the Grateful Dead. And I've never been that into the Grateful Dead, but in one of the early episodes, they just talk about Jerry Garcia's, thinking about things. And he would always just ask himself the question, well, is that fun? I mean, am I going to be having fun doing that? And that he would always come back to that versus, oh, am I making great art here? Or am I, going to make a masterpiece that's remembered for the ages? He wasn't that interested in that. He just wanted to have fun. And I think that kind of connects with what we're talking about here is like, what's that? What's the alive thing? And even with my podcast, I've started to, do new things to give me new energy for doing the podcast. So I really identify with that as well.
Awesome.
Okay. So let's take us a little bit more up to date. So one benefit to doing this second round of the interview is, hey, it's 4 months later. What is new in your life?
So I've just for the beginning, from the beginning of the year, I've been working on a book. It's a step-by-step origami sort of tutorial book, and that will be published. It should be published in September of this year. So yeah, just before Christmas. That's kind of the goal. And if you're into origami or if you want to learn, then you can find that book. It'll be, I think if you follow me on Instagram, I'll definitely be mentioning a lot about it leading up to, when it is published. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been busy with. And then just projects, trying to do as many collaborations as possible with people on Instagram and just connecting with people and just trying to find out what that next, exciting thing is for me.
That's awesome. Do you have a title for the book yet?
The book's called Love Origami.
Love Origami. Great. Mm-hmm. Great. I think I've said this to you before, Ross, if you ever do like a kind of a autobiography or something like that, I just recommend the title One Fold at a Time. You can take it or leave it. So let me, this obviously your Hell Yes is a visual medium that we can't, capture fully here just by talking about it. But I don't think we've really, maybe given our listeners a real, even an attempt at a picture of like what you're up to. So can you give us some examples of, either some of the origami art that would be featured in your book or some of, something that you've been working on recently?
The book at this stage, I can't really say too much about it. Like, it's just 20 little projects that you can, that you'll learn step by step how to fold this and that and that. I don't want to give too much away. But the other stuff that I've been busy with in the projects, it's kind of just a lot of commissions, a lot of Instagram campaigns I've been running. So a client will potentially come to me and say, hey, listen, we want to run this campaign where we'd like you to help us promote some product or this place or whatever the case is. And then it'll be like, cool, well, this is what I can sort of create for you, and this is how we can use it, and potentially do an installation around it as well. So I get asked to do origami installations too. So it'll be like last year I did a project where it was 1,600 butterflies at an event that went up for like a day. I didn't fold all of them by myself. I had quite a lot of help with that. And so that's the kind of stuff that I've been doing. And
that's cool.
I think origami, fortunately for me, is something that when you see it in real life and it looks really cool, if it's been folded nicely, there's cool paper that you've used, it looks awesome. But also with the animations, you can actually watch the piece of paper turn into, go from a flat sheet into a little guy running around or a rhinoceros or, an elephant. And people respond to that because we've all touched paper before. We've all played with it, cut it, try to fold it into something. So there's some sort of like interest in it. So it's like magic almost. You're like, wow, that was a piece of paper before. Now it's a dragon flying around on my screen, So I think that's the kind of stuff that that's part of the reason why I enjoy what I do so much.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, and I've looked at some of your art on Instagram, amazing stuff. And I think, there is something like, I think we all have some limited experience with origami, probably just, very rudimentary things that people have tried to fold. But then to see that take into this, 2 or 3, 5 levels up that you're doing is amazing. It's just like, oh wow, you could do that with paper. That's amazing. Can you tell us? Can you think of one of your most challenging origami art projects that you've created, or just one that comes to mind as like, oh, I really love this one, or this one was challenging?
So generally the project that I'm busy with at the moment, and that can be whatever. So like whatever I'm designing always ends up being the most challenging thing for me, because I've got to create something that doesn't exist. And I've got to, plan out the folds, and there's a lot of trial and error. I'm the kind of person who's very hands-on and practical. So I'm getting better at, looking at a piece of paper and kind of deciding, cool, well, I want to shorten the body. Let's say I'm designing an elephant, which I am at the moment, just for myself. I've got like a repertoire of a whole bunch of designs, and I can use them for exhibitions, for clients or whatever. And I enjoy the design process because it's like, okay, cool. Well, on this sheet of paper, regardless of how big it is, the size of the paper will just change the size of the finished folded piece. But it's like, well, how do I want the ears to look? And initially it was just like, how the hell do I fold this so that it looks kind of like something? But now because I've been doing it a lot more and I'm getting better at it, it's kind of like, well, how do we change the shape of the elephant's ears, for example? How long do we make the trunk? Do we make the legs a little bit shorter? What if we lengthen them? And I'm starting to find that the kind of characters that are coming out of the design process are quite animated in a way. And I think because of the animation I'm doing and the stuff that inspires me, I'm inspired by films and, Japanese animation. And that is definitely starting to show through in my work, which I think is quite cool, because you don't really know where inspiration comes from. But when you see something that you've created, you kind of pick out, oh, I can see where I drew inspiration from that, or for that rather.
That's great. I'm just curious, have you been to Japan, or have you connected with any Japanese origami artists? Or
I have. So just before I opened my Instagram account, I was in Japan with my brother for 5 days. We went to Tokyo. He was teaching English over in South Korea. So I went and visited him for a while, and we went to Japan for a couple of days. And I was just blown away by just everything. I mean, I've always had an interest in just the way the Japanese think, and the way they put products together, the way they live, the whole Zen meditation sort of approach to life. And it was extremely inspiring. And if I look back now, I was clearly really inspired to do something a bit more Japanese. And if I think about the films I'm watching now, and like I mentioned, the Japanese animations, it's all part of that. I think maybe in some previous life or some parallel universe, I am Japanese. I never know.
Yeah, maybe you could do one of those ancestry things and see if there's any Japanese in your ancestry. Yeah, who knows?
Exactly.
Just a note. I lived in Japan for a year in the north end of Honshu, in a little, quote unquote little city called Aomori. It's about 200,000. That's little for Japan, and I was just completely blown away by the culture there. I'd never seen anything like it, and just a Japan world was pretty amazing and overwhelming for the first few months I was there. So I can identify with that. Okay, well, to round things out, I always like to ask, you're doing great things. You've got a big following on Instagram. You're well established in what you're doing with origami, but to look towards the future, I always like to ask our guests, do you have a big vision? And what I like to call this is your cringe-worthy vision, a vision so big that it makes you cringe to think about sharing it. No pressure. Some guests have them. Some guests, just prefer to kind of stick to the, one fold at a time. But do you have any big vision going forward of what you still want to do?
Man, so I think where I'm going is, well, my interest lies a lot in animation, and potentially starting an animation studio, and maybe working with some, with a film crew, like to create a story or a series of stories that we could put out on social media or on television, or maybe even make a movie. I don't know, man. Like that's kind of where my head is at the moment. I think I'm slowly starting to realize everything that I've been inspired by since I was a kid it all came through film. So I think that now that I'm kind of I'm older now, and I start realizing what I'm good at and what I'm not so good at. But if I could be part of a team or helping a team create a film, and it can be based on anything, just based on ideas that I've helped create, that would be quite a thing. And it feels weird talking about it, but it is a big sort of dream of mine.
Awesome. Yeah. And it sounds like an emerging vision. And I just love giving people the opportunity to share that. And there's been plenty of other people like you, Ross, where it's like, wow, I've never really talked about this to anybody, but I'll just go ahead and put it out there. So good for you. Like that's a little sign to the universe that, hey, this is something I'm interested in.
Yeah, exactly.
And what I also really like is, and I'm finding this too with my creative endeavor with the podcast is, that you just kind of keep going with it and then you see where it takes you, and it might take you in a different direction, but it's an evolutionary process versus, oh, I'm going to do this for a month and then I'm done and it's on to the next thing and starting over. What will come next for you and for me will evolve out of what we're doing now. And I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, and it does work. I think that if you can just focus on whoever you are, if you're listening, just focus on that thing that excites you. And something that I was told to me by, I think it was my brother that told me, is like, let what's attracted to you come to you instead of trying to go and chase the thing, whatever it is. Because, I mean, if you chase money, if you chase big house, big car, whatever, you'll end up getting it, but there might be a cost, and there might be a health or a stress or some sort of cost or financial cost for that matter. But I think if you just focus on yourself and what you're doing and just trying to become a little bit more self-aware, that will definitely help you. It'll bring things into your life that you could never have ever expected. And I know this because it's happened to me and I've seen it happen. I mean, you hear people talking about just do the thing, man, just focus on what you're doing, and crazy things happen, and you just think like I have thought in the past, that it's just those sort of things are reserved for the elite or reserved for people that have some sort of ability. It's not. It's got nothing to do with that. It's practice. It's just, like I said, becoming self-aware and just finding out who you are inside and sharing a little bit of that with the world, and the universe responds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, I could take it as one example that I never would have guessed that I would be talking on a podcast with, a popular origami artist in South Africa. It's just, couldn't have imagined that a year ago for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly, man.
I would also submit that with the whole, chasing wealth and the house and car and all that stuff, that I've just found that to be like, and I've done that in the past or tried to do that. It hasn't worked out for me, but I look at that as sort of like the cherry on top now. It's sort of like, hey, if I end up getting that at the end after I've really found some success in the thing that I love, great. But not to mistake that for the thing, like once I get that house, once I get that car or whatever, or that amount of income, that's going to in and of itself make me happy, because I've found anyway that's not the case. It's really like finding that thing that makes you come alive. So.
Exactly.
So do you have one tip, quote, or resource? You've already given us tons of great advice and thoughts to take away. Any last thing that you would recommend to our listeners who may be out there earlier in their journey about moving forward with their Hell Yes lives?
I think just don't take everything so seriously. We do tend to, focus on things that aren't really there, that don't really exist. We're like, oh, we can't do this because of X, Y, and Z. That, and don't listen too much to what other people have to say. If it's negative feedback, if it's positive, then, take it and don't let it, get your ego flying around all over the place. But just listen to what people have to say, but also just know that you actually know what's right for you. So go and do that thing.
Awesome. Well, Ross, it's been great talking to you. I am almost positive that we have had no technical glitches this time, and I will confirm that with you after we're done here. And can you tell us where on the internet we can find you?
Yes, absolutely. So most of the work I do will be on Instagram. My Instagram account is called White on Rice. So that's the brand I essentially started through this whole journey of mine. And otherwise, if you just Google Ross Symons origami or White on Rice origami, it should be one of the first hits that comes up on Google. And from that, you can link to my Twitter and whatever. But everything kind of happens on my website, which is white-onrice.com, and Instagram, which is, if you just Google my name, which is Ross Symons, Symons, then you can find me there.
Great. And we will have links in the show notes to the places you just mentioned there. So to close out our time, Ross, I always like to say hell yes together on the count of 3 with my guests. Are you ready to do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Hell yes. All right, Ross. Thanks for joining me.
Cool. Thanks, Norman.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Hell Yes Life podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite RSS feed. If you like the show, please leave a rating and review. And if you want to stay connected, visit hellyeslife.com and sign up for the e-newsletter and private Facebook group. Again, I'm Norman Bell. Thanks for joining me. Now let's get out there and live a hell yes life.